You forgot the first rule of remakes, Jill. Don't fuck with the original.
Hey everybody, welcome to Don't F with the Original!
With Nicholas, I'm the video game correspondent for Idiomatic.
Eric, I'm an English teacher.
And Chris, subtitle editor and occasional writer.
And I am Dimitri, editor-in-chief of Idiomatic.com and movie critic, and today we are talking about Blade Runner to celebrate the DVD, Blu-ray, combo, back, digital, download, whatever, of Blade Runner to celebrate its 30th anniversary. Yes, it has been 30 years since Blade Runner first came out, and maybe just 2 years since it came out again and again and again in a different version. Actually, it's kind of interesting. We probably all saw different versions of it, I think.
Most likely. I think I saw the original one. And it was that kind of movie. I remember watching it when I was young, where I was going to love it because I love science fiction and it was weird and you had tall skyscrapers, you had flying cars. And I hated the story. I was like, I didn't get it. Well, I was fairly young when I saw it. And then when I was a teenager, like, I wanted to like it so much, just couldn't. If you had a vision for your first movie, and then you keep revisiting again and again and again and again and again, and you keep messing around with it, eventually you kind of lose it. It's kind of like adding constant spices to the meal that you're trying to do. Eventually, there's no flavor. So, I don't know. I get tired of those re-releases, director's cut, and it's like, okay, enough.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think one theatrical cut and one director's cut makes sense, because the director's cut is created, the studio comes in, goes like, well, we can't really make box office money with this, it's too long, whatever, and then you do your theatrical cut, then you release a director's cut to get some of a more authorial version of it. But, like, once that's made, like, you really should let it go. Like, the version I saw was the 2007 Final Cut version, and I'll believe it when I see it, in the sense of it being final. But it's sort of like, it's 2007. You're almost, like, 25 years later, and you're still recutting your damn movie.
Is that the one that was released in, like, the collector's edition briefcase or something like
that?
Yeah,
That's
I remember that one.
Yeah.
Collector's edition briefcase.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is back when DVDs were selling, right? So,
okay. I guess, yeah.
You know, so you bought them more for the case, and, you know, like, it looks nice on a shelf, you know.
Okay. And
it was like, I think it was a metal briefcase or something.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
It was really pretty cool, I have to say.
So,
you know, I had, like, a little bit of collector geek kicking in when I saw it.
Okay, so what we're going to do for the episode is we're going to do a little quick synopsis of the movie, for those of you who just want to remember what it's about. We're going to discuss the movie, then we're going to have a little spoiler section where we're going to feel free to discuss the plot points that, if you haven't seen the movie, you might want to skip. We'll keep that to the end, that way you can stop listening to the recording when we give you the warning. So, quick synopsis going in. 2019 is actually the date, that's 7 years from now. We have colonized other planets, our Earth is overpopulated, and we have created replicants, which are essentially humanoid robots. They're essentially a slave race. They work in the colonies. When they try to get to Earth and escape to Earth, they are intercepted by what we call Blade Runners, who are essentially Border Patrol police officers for robots. Yeah. Who destroy the replicants. Now, we follow a group of replicants led by Rutger Hauer, Mr. Hobo with a Shotgun himself, who is trying to find a way to live past his 4-year expiry date.
Yeah.
And we also follow in parallel Harrison Ford as a Blade Runner who's trying to catch them.
It's not that far off, huh, when you think about it?
2019 to date, or the fact that we've colonized other planets?
No, just overpopulated.
I have a beef with that because if you look at the European and North American countries, the population growth is mostly due to immigration. We have kept our population growth by replication, human replication in check, and when other countries start doing that as well, the overpopulation thing is going to go away. It's just a different way of thinking about it, but Europe and North America, they're pretty fine with the overpopulation thing.
Oh, they're not remotely overpopulated when you compare to what's going on in Asia.
Exactly, but in Asia they're still having like 5, 6, 7 kids, where here we're not. So when their mind shift changes and they maybe start having smaller families and stuff like that, there's not going to be as big of a problem.
I don't disagree with that. I think by introducing contraception in general, the population just sort of lowers. Like all the industrialized country where contraception is more popular, their population tends to drop.
So, I mean, the whole overpopulation thing, I think, is, not that big of a deal. Mm-hmm. There are bigger problems to worry about. So, back to Blade Runner.
Well, I think it's a valid concern, though, because it's still, even if we don't overpopulate, we're going to reach a capacity population, and there's still going to be a scarcity war over water or something, you know what I mean? So, whether you look at that type of thing through the metrics of, like population or just, in terms of food or the cost of food, a world like Blade Runner still becomes kind of plausible and interesting to talk about. You know what I mean? So,
and not just that, like even having a slave labor where was it? I was doing something with my students, and one of the article that I found was that at this time in history, there's never been more slave labor ever in the history of human beings. Then again, we're 7 billion, so there's a big number, obviously.
Yeah.
But just that, for me, coincides too with Blade Runner, where, even their life expectancy of a slave is not going to be that long.
You put someone in the middle class, they want to be in the upper class.
Yeah.
And the easiest way to get into the upper class is to create a class below you.
Right.
You know what I mean? And this is, it's almost like the nine, evil of this type of world, where it's just like, you can breed that underclass. And then what happens when that underclass tries to get out?
Almost in that same idea, I found it interesting to rewatch Blade Runner today for similar reasons, where you watch the replicants like they are, foreigners from the colonies who are being treated like slaves by investors from Earth, and then when they try to come to Earth, they're being hunted down, and it's like it was hard not to draw parallels with the immigration issues in the U.S. that were raised and whatnot, and that was sort of interesting to watch it.
And the Total Recall remake.
Which, by the way, looks a lot like Blade Runner.
But not for, I think, in a canny way. It was obviously trying to make a nod to that.
Although, to be fair, it would have been better if, like, the replicants hadn't shown to be violent at the beginning, like, the first thing you see of the replicant is, like, him shooting the guy that's trying to see if he's human or not, If they hadn't seen that and it was just, like, replicants trying to come to Earth and just trying to thing, it would have been like a little more than just, okay, well, now they're violent, they're killing people, so you have to stop them.
They're villains.
But it wouldn't be a Ridley Scott movie if not. There's not really any characters. Like, this is the one thing about Ridley Scott. You know what to expect, like, in his movies. No characters. Like, he doesn't like characters.
I disagree with you. I disagree that Blade Runner is black and white. I actually felt a lot for the replicants.
Is that because of the ending?
Well, it's because of the final act.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the last shot or anything, but the final act, I find, does a lot to humanize these villains.
Is it because Rutger Hauer doesn't have a shirt and he's holding a pigeon?
I think it's because Rutger Hauer plays it very well, where you see that he's clearly needs to be stopped. He is a murderer, and he shows no sign of wanting to stop, but at the same time, his desperation, his anger is palpable, and you almost you understand where he's coming from. It's a tragedy what his life is, and I felt for that. I mean, like, having watched Prometheus, you can see that there are certain themes that Ridley Scott seems fascinated with, and it's the idea of God being a disappointment, of your maker being sort of a disappointment, and how that takes a toll on you. And that's certainly what happens to Rutger Hauer's character, and I like that. And I actually felt that was better executed in Blade Runner than it was in Prometheus.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. The first time I watched the movie, when I saw Rutger Hauer, I thought this would be the perfect casting for Magneto.
Yes, I agree.
And the reason I thought that was because of that dual nature of Magneto in a way, where it's just like, here's the best friend of, like Charles Xavier, he's evil, but he's got a purpose, and he keeps going the wrong way. And then for a couple story arcs, he's good again. And I could see that with these replicants, you know what I mean? Like, but he kind of embodies that, very powerful presence, and commanding person, but at the same time just tragically flawed, because he's misreading, what he should do.
Right. And to a certain degree, I felt that he was a more complex and complete character than the hero, Harrison Ford's Deckard.
I don't know if I take that away from the movie, because I actually like a detective story where the main character has less personality than the villains, and I think this one kind of follows through with that motif, where it's a character driven by a sense of purpose or a desperate need for purpose. You know, like it's routine, it's habits, the noodles he eats. You know, it's not really who he is or what's making him do the things. You know. Whereas it's the villains who keep emoting about why they're doing things, you know, what they're going to do, and you've got to kind of then funnel that back to the character and see what the character's kind of reacting against. And this is what I think the most interesting thing about the private eye genre.
Yeah,
exactly. Like the character didn't even want that job. He said, "I'm retired. I don't want to do this," but he has to do it anyway. You know, it's like you have to find them. So all right, he just goes through the motion, and that's what you see.
Well, what's interesting as well is, and I don't blame Harrison Ford's performance or even the choice of making the main character like that, but like as you mentioned, in keeping with the film noir convention, he is very much a character driven by circumstance. He keeps to himself. He's a very mysterious character, and the film also plays on that with the final shot, which we'll get to in the spoiler section. But the movie sort of has two separate threads, one with the villains that he's hunting and one with the love interest he's meeting, who's a replicant. And they never connect those two threads at all. So the thing that centers it is Harrison Ford's character. But the movie deliberately keeps him vague and sort of elusive. And I wonder if also that's not another issue where the connective thread is sort of one that you can barely grasp on. Like, because throughout certain sections of the movie, I was like, well, that's an interesting subplot with the love story there, but I'm having trouble seeing why that matters or how it relates to anything, you know?
Yeah, the love affair didn't need to be there. You know, there was enough going on with the storyline anyway. You know, it's just, it didn't mollify anything or make you feel, you know.
Whatever happened to Sean Young?
She auditioned to play Catwoman in the most awkward way possible and tanked her career in doing so.
Bro.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
What did she do?
She showed up in a cat suit demanding that she be hired and went on to various talk shows in her cat suit. Yeah, that did not help her career any. But, like, she plays a femme fatale in Blade Runner. But the problem with the script for me is that the femme fatale in the film noir genre is the catalyst for most of the hero's journey and misery. Here, she's just sort of there. And doesn't really turn out that fatale.
Yeah, that's true. So Harrison Ford, what do you think of his acting?
I kind of like it. Well, I like most of those great actors before they became like sketches of themselves, like caricatures. This one, he's good. He knows what he's doing. He obviously knows what's the detective genre. I still don't know what Daryl Anna was playing, but I don't think she did either. Rutger Hauer, you know, he had definitely personality. Well, personality, that's the thing. Not necessarily a character, but I thought like just the way he looked, just the way that he looked pained sometimes, playing the part.
Yeah.
It was pretty interesting what he did in a limited role.
Yeah.
And that's always a show of a really good actor that's doing something interesting and going beyond what's on the page. And that's always the part that I find interesting in whatever movie.
Yeah, I've always been surprised that Rutger Hauer sort of disappeared sometime around the early 90s.
Yeah.
Because he was such a consistently great actor throughout the 80s, certainly. And I mean, like, even like you watch Hobo with a Shotgun, which is sort of a semi-comeback movie for him. And the movie's crap, but like he's phenomenal in it.
Yeah.
You know?
And especially it's interesting because I've seen some of the Norwegian films that he did, and there he is like interacting in his mother tongue, and then he speaks English, and you're like, wow, he's probably a native speaker of English, but no, turns out he's not, and he's doing a great career at it.
Yeah, no, he's the type of actor that, you know, I'm surprised that something like Tarantino hasn't kind of rebooted his career for him, if you know what I mean, because he's got that, you know,
Definitely.
talent, he's got that face now, you know, and he even had it then, you know.
And now his face is even more interesting when you see him in Hobo with a Shotgun, just how lined and lived in it is.
Oh yeah, well the Hobo with a Shotgun starts with just music and his face for like a good 5 minutes, and I gotta say, it was the best 5 minutes of the entire movie. I was like, wow.
Yeah, and I kind of like the overexposed light on that, and sometimes like he's just like in the train, and I was like, wow, I want to follow that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Nick, what's your sense?
To me, the best time you get to know the characters is when like the two replicants talk towards the end. They meet a human and they talk because they're trying to save their lives, and that happens like 3/4 of the way through the movie, and hey, you finally get to know these characters finally. But it's a little late now for that, and so I have no real interest in any of those characters because I don't know them. That's probably what happens. I kind of like the ending, when the bad guy is there, because I know him at that point. But then when that's resolved, you're like, okay, and I stop caring anymore.
A quick question, maybe off the topic, but how well did it do in the theater when it was released?
Not great. Not great. This is really a cult classic, not a box office success.
I think there's something to be said there because, I think I myself have probably seen the director's cut where you tried to kind of correct it, and I saw the original release, you know what I mean? But I saw them over several years, didn't watch them back to back, couldn't really remember the difference. I remember there's a narration element, then I'm getting confused with like the different versions of Dune in my head. But it's almost that period in time where it's just like there are these big movies that you watch when you're like 12, 14, 15 or whatever, and it's just like you don't remember them all. Is it because you're watching them in a group and you end up kind of splintering off, or you're drinking too much Coke in someone's basement? I don't know. It's just like you end up getting a
drinking
sugar rush.
or doing.
Well, it's both of those things. I did grow up in the suburbs, but my memory of it is really the thing that I like about it is it's a very disjointed story. This lipstick, glossy, and yet grimy, constantly raining vision of the future. With just like this bright lit neon, which is just gorgeous. And then you've got this rumpled man walking through it, like Peter Falk out of Columbo. It's just like the quintessential PI, and you're trying to make sense of the story through his eyes. But the thing is, what's the mystery? And it is metaphysical for sure. So it doesn't necessarily need to follow a perfect line. You know what I mean? You end up kind of being swept away by just the art of the film. It's not something I need to revisit very often. You know what I mean? But I guess I've watched it 3 times in the course of my life. So maybe once every decade.
Yeah, whenever it's on TV, I'll watch it, and I'm always stunned by how forward the visuals were, especially when you're comparing now CGI. Thank you, and everything else. And it's the same thing that I'm always struck whenever I see 2001, where the visuals are so ahead of their time.
But think about it this way: the thing with something like Minority Report, what I mean, which is quite brilliant, another Philip K. Dick, based on, but the vision there of the future with the CI, even though there's practical sets and everything, is everything moves a lot.
Yeah.
Whereas the brilliance of Blade Runner is that it's more shadow than anything else, and the things that move are almost kind of like moving back and forth. You know what I mean? It's a very limited movement, and it gives you a sense of like, almost looking at the window of a department store at Christmas time. Where you've just got like those little robots, that have been the same since the 50s, and they're kind of doing the same move, but you get swept into the magic of it, and I loved it for that. Whereas something like, Minority Report or the new Lucas movies, like there's so much going on. You've got to watch every single corner of the film, and it's overwhelmingly in the worst sense.
The thing about it is, it's revolutionary. It really is. So first of all, I just watched it today, and it looks better than Total Recall, the remake, does. It looks better than half the movies going on. The cars flying, they look like real cars flying. Yeah.
It's not super smooth. They're jittery. It's not perfect technology. You can really see. It looks real. Yeah. It looks like what we would have flying cars, what they would look like.
Yeah, and it looks like a world that's lived in.
Yeah.
Exactly. It doesn't look like cardboard.
It's like
it doesn't.
Jetsons world.
Exactly. And that's the problem that we get for some of those science fiction movies lately, where it feels too glossy sometimes. Sometimes it's a look they're going for, and sometimes it just kind of happens and you're like, eh. But yeah, definitely. Very visionary as far as the visuals. It is spectacular.
Yeah, because when you glue in an image of a flying car onto a real background, even with CGI, there's always that tint of like, the light's not perfectly right and everything. And what I found so brilliant is that Ridley Scott just stuck like really bright lights to every car so that it does like that camera lens flare, so that it sort of hides most of the features of the car and all the shadows, so that you can't see if the shadows and light match perfectly because of that flare, and it's so it looks real every time. It's really clever stuff.
No, for sure.
And I can't help but feel that most of Japanese cyberpunk anime is all just spin-offs of Blade Runner in terms of how they approach that kind of world.
Yeah.
But having said all that in praise of Blade Runner, I have to say I don't like it. Like, I was really dreading reviewing it because I think technically it's a marvel. I think it is, without a doubt, a very influential movie. It is an interesting movie, and for the life of me, I cannot connect with it emotionally. I like certain bits of it. I like the finale with.
But see, that's what I mean by the Ridley Scott movies. I can never connect to those things.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's like saying you need to connect with something like Resident Evil. You don't. You know what I mean?
I do.
Oh, well, in my mind, then, you know what I mean? I do put this as like, this is something like Dread or something, you know what I mean? Where it's just like a good piece of genre fiction elevated by craftsmanship.
Mm.
You know, which could be Star Wars when you get down to it. You know, it could be a lot of things. But this one, you know what I mean? Like, is really just like a B-level movie done by an A-level director. Mm. You know what I mean? And so the disconnect is like, why did he?
Yeah,
bother?
but even then, like, there's parts of it where he doesn't seem like he's having fun. Doesn't seem like there's a part that you go, oh wow, that was a cool scene. And I get writers like that. Martin Amis, the guy's a genius for sure, but I can never connect to any of his novels. I just don't like them.
Lifetime's Error.
He's British, you know.
Yeah, but even then, like, I can't. Oh, wow.
I love that you go like, even then.
It's also short.
But I can never connect to them. And even when you take, like, really bad films sometimes, you'll have a scene that's really cool. This one, I don't know. There was nothing that really popped out that stands out for me.
No, I agree with you. Like, you gave Resident Evil as an example. The fact of the matter is, though, Resident Evil, for some reason, I got attached to these paper-thin, cardboard, idiotic characters. Like, when Michelle Rodriguez comes back alive in the 5th one, I'm like, yay! She's back! But, like, Blade Runner, I was sort of like, that happened. Well, that's really well done. I'm bored.
I have to agree. I really enjoyed watching the movie because, again, it looked spectacular. It looked better than a lot of things I have seen in movies recently. But, you know, that's cool, I've seen this. But then, you know, the story ends, the conclusion, and you're like, yeah, I don't care.
It's strange, huh? Because sometimes when I see the visuals of Ridley Scott, I always wonder, should he have been a painter or something?
Well, he started as a set designer.
Yeah, the set designers are great, but at some points I'm like, should he be a photograph? Is storytelling, movie making really the right medium for him? And sometimes I wonder that, where I'm like, it almost sounds like I'm a guidance counselor for him. But I do wonder if it's the right venue for him.
Well, given his success, I think it probably is. But I know what you mean.
Is that a measure? Success, like...
Well, what it tells me is that I'm not an audience. Exactly, that's it. I'm not part of his audience, but he has found one.
Yeah, no, for sure. But everybody finds an audience, right?
No. Yeah. I can guarantee
even Weird Al Yankovic found an audience.
He's a genius.
And now the podcast spins wildly. Sorry, we're back. We cut out Nick singing.
Okay, so 3 of us feel the same way about Blade Runner, but what is it exactly that keeps us from connecting with it? Because I don't want to leave it at, like, here's this classic, and, well, I didn't like it. What is it that we don't connect with? Because I can't figure it out.
It's very simple. You don't have any moments of privacy where you kind of get to know the guy. You know, like most of those detective fiction, they're talking. There's 2 partners talking about their lives, and you kind of feel like you're in the car with them and you connect. You never connect with them. You never get to know who they are, to have that private moment of knowing them, or him walking into a bar and sort of talking about it. You don't get the sense of it. And what is it that we like about movies? Why is it that people still go crazy over Before Sunset? Because they're walking...
By people, you mean the 4 people in this room?
No, but it's one of those movies that you spend time with the characters. You kind of get a sense that you know them. Here, these characters, you don't know them. You have no idea. They're just like pictures.
Yeah. It's been too long since I've seen the movie for me to really counter you with examples from the movie where you see him doing things.
So I win.
But I do remember spending time with the characters, and maybe they're just not discussing, but you're seeing as much of the character as you would from, like, The Man with No Name of the Search of the Only.
Right,
You know what I
right,
mean? Like,
yeah.
it's that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, so either you buy into it and like it, or you don't. And the thing is, I liked it. You know what I mean? I'm not really defending it as a great movie. I see the complete flaw. You know what I mean? But especially the iterations and the desire to kind of keep going with it. But I don't know if I need to connect emotionally with all characters. Is my point. You know, just like Fistful of Dollars and all these movies, like I didn't connect with these characters. You know,
Actually, I kind of did, just because he looks so cool.
Well, I guess then it comes down to most people think Harrison Ford is pretty cool looking. You know, so I don't know.
And I don't even know if it's really that I didn't connect with all the characters. That's my issue, because I really got attached to the villain. I really did. I thought his story was compelling. And yet, for some reason, the rest of the movie, for me, sort of dragged. And I'm wondering if it's not maybe, and I'm just shooting in the dark here, but maybe a lack of humor a little bit? Maybe
It's very grim. It's super grim. And it doesn't quite build to a satisfying peak, if you know what I mean. Like,
But it's funny, huh? We were talking about that where Daredevil, all of a sudden, like, the Frank Miller run gave the tone for Daredevil, where it was very bleak, it was very dark. I get a sense sometimes that Blade Runner gave a tone for some of those very grim, very, non-funny science fiction. And then I was so glad seeing Looper, because there's a lot of funny parts in it. Like, it actually has a sense of humor.
yeah.
That's cool, to have something where, ha ha ha, you're laughing.
That's what laughing sounds like.
No, I think there was something in the early 80s, late 70s, you know what I mean? Again, we've talked about it before, we're coming out of like a pretty bleak economic situation. And there really wasn't that much humor when you looked at the future, you know what I mean, in terms of the projection. And then you put crime on top of that, you put, immigration issues on top of that, and you put this existential crisis on top of it. I kind of think maybe Ridley Scott just kind of bit off more than he could take.
Maybe.
You know what I mean? And it was maybe just too much, for basically what was really like a hunter movie. You know what I mean? Like where it's just a guy kind of chasing people down. You know what I mean? And think of this movie being done by someone like Christopher Nolan. You know what I mean? It would be equally insufferable today. You know what I mean? Because it would be so serious and heavy-handed. Yeah. And it's maybe, like one part of the flaw of like the Batman thing, like I've said before, is it's overly serious. I have that disconnect because of it, and I do think you're right. You know what I mean? There's that heavy-handed directorial approach with like, I've got things to say, even though I'm doing it with a genre piece. And maybe that's what's coming between us,
It's interesting you bring Christopher Nolan's movie, because of course if Christopher Nolan had done Blade Runner, he would have hired Michael Kamen to do the music, and the music would have carried me through a lot of exposition. Whereas in Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, Vangelis is doing the music, and I have to say, it's god awful. The music bugs me so much. You have these beautiful scenes of just him exposing the city, and it's directed in such a way that's like, this is a city, this is a future, this is a city. Everybody's treating it normal, except the music, except Vangelis' music going da da da, as if you're watching a wonder. It's like you're completely going against the tone of the film. It's driving me up the wall. I just wanted to throw a jab at Vangelis there.
Jab away.
You, Nick, raised a really interesting question that I wonder if you guys have an answer to, because I sure didn't. Why are cops like Decker called Blade Runners?
Is that in the book?
It's a novella, if anything, but it's been so long since I read it that I can't remember. It's like...
No, but I was wondering the same thing, and I don't know.
At first I saw the movie Blade Runner, I wonder what it's about. I wonder what the Blade Runner is, and you're excited, you want to see that, and they just destroy the beginning.
Blade, you want someone running.
You have the scroll at the beginning of the movie, the people who find replicants, they're called Blade Runner. And then that's the whole thing about it, and they don't go through it in the movie at all. I was like, okay, you just wanted that to work because they made a cool title, and that's it.
Well, they're almost like bounty hunters, right? So they're running people down, you know what I mean? So that makes sense. But the whole Blade thing, I don't know, it just kind of sounds cool.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're barely ever called Blade Runners in the movie itself. And so that little blurb that appears at the beginning of the movie, like a white font on a black background, like no decoration, barely music, for information that's conveyed in the movie later, feels an awful lot like a test audience went like, I don't understand what's going on. And the studio head went like, you need a cooler title. And like both merge into that one little caption there and a new title.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get into rating. I don't think we're moving forward with this at all.
I give the B. You have to watch it. You have to see it at least once. Enjoy the visual. If that's the kind of thing, you're going to love it. Maybe you'll get in the story a little more than we did. Maybe you don't need, have those characters fleshed out like us to really enjoy it. You can just buy, okay, this is the good guy. I have to root for him. These are the bad guys. Stop them. That's not for me. I need my characters fleshed out, so that's why I can give it a really good grade. But I did still enjoy watching it, and I might watch it again in a few years or so. Just to re-see it again. So that's why a B.
I'd give it a C+, and simply because it's not a movie that I particularly enjoyed watching. The visuals, yes, they're stunning, but if I'm talking about characters or plots, where is that?
Well, I think there's enough plot there, but it doesn't quite hit the home run for sure. But I do think it's a solid B movie, like in all senses of it. It's just like it's a B level film, and it does it really, really well. And like I said, and the visuals are the thing that really kind of hold the whole thing together. Mm-hmm. It bites off a little bit too much thematically, but in the end, delivers a product. That's interesting and still stands to this day is more interesting than a lot of the really bad summer blockbusters.
Yeah, that's true. I have the hardest time because it's hard to grade a movie that you appreciate intellectually but do not feel for to a certain degree. I'm going to give it the same I gave Tim Burton's Batman 1989, which is a B. Because for me, I could not give it any less because it is so spectacularly influential and in a good way. The set designs completely change after Blade Runner for the best, I think. And in terms of the story, at least the tropes it introduced, the vision of the future, the idea of presenting a future in which the societal markers matter more than the technology will have, that was introduced by Blade Runner as well, and I love that. But I can't give it an A because I don't feel it. Like, as simple as that. I guess by the silence, I'd say we're ready for spoilers.
Yes, we are.
Alright, so, entering spoiler section. If you haven't seen Blade Runner and want to see it, and I think overall we kind of do recommend that you at least see it, if only for the visuals, stop listening now because we're about to spoil the movie. So, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Consider yourself spoiled. It ends with an origami unicorn. Ha-ha!
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get the ending. It was like, okay, there's a origami unicorn, and apparently that's supposed to mean that the detective Harrison Ford is also a replicant. He doesn't know it because that's what the new models are. They don't even know they're replicants. At that point, I really didn't care. The bad guy that I knew was dead, so it's like, okay, well, who cares about this part? He's with the Femme Fatale, whatever. And I completely missed that anyway.
In fairness, they do set it up. There is a scene where she's going like, hey, Decker, have you checked your own file? Did you check if you or not? And then he just falls asleep, so she never gets to complete that thought.
Yeah.
And so when later he gets the unicorn, which is an origami unicorn of a unicorn that Decker has dreamt of all his life, and is like, how else would the guy know other than if he were implanted those memories? It was foreshadowed. I'm not entirely sure what we're meant to take from that thematically, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, me neither, to be honest. You know what I mean? Like, you can maybe use it as a justification for why he seems so alone. You know what I mean? Like, he's not connecting with humans because he's not human. It's a coda to the film that, just doesn't add a thing, So, I don't know.
So, yeah.
No, it's funny because I find the conversation kind of like stilted at this point because it's true. Like, you do lose interest in the story at a certain point.
Yeah.
Even, you know what I mean? Like, the story doesn't have the momentum to kind of keep you going. Like, it's just...
No, it's very true.
And I keep going back to just the images of some of those scenes that we're describing. Like, yeah, they look nice, but it's just like, yeah, I don't need to read more into them. I could just describe them. I could read them. I don't really care. I guess that is a pretty damning thing to say about a film.
Yeah. So, that's it. If you want to post your comment, your questions, you want to tell us that we're idiots for not loving Blade Runner, and I know you're out there and you want to do it, write us at mail@idiomanic.com or post a comment at idiomanic.com. We're also on Facebook, we're also on Twitter, and we will see you next time.
You forgot the first rule of remakes, Jill. Don't fuck with the original.
Hey everybody, welcome to Don't F with the Original.
With Nicholas, I'm the video game correspondent for Idiomatic.
Eric, I'm an English teacher.
And Chris, subtitle editor and occasional writer.
And I am Dimitri, editor-in-chief of Idiomanic.com and movie critic, and today we are talking about Blade Runner to celebrate the DVD, Blu-ray, combo, back, digital, download, whatever, of Blade Runner to celebrate its 30th anniversary. Yes, it has been 30 years since Blade Runner first came out, and maybe just 2 years since it came out again and again and again in a different version. Actually, it's kind of interesting. We probably all saw different versions of it, I think.
Most likely. I think I saw the original one. And it was that kind of movie. I remember watching it when I was young, where I was gonna love it because I love science fiction, and it was weird, and you had tall skyscrapers, you had
Colonize other planets, our Earth is overpopulated, and we have created replicants, which are essentially humanoid robots. They're essentially a slave race. They work in the colonies. When they try to get to Earth and escape to Earth, they are intercepted by what we call Blade Runners, who are essentially Border Patrol police officers for robots who destroy the replicants. Now, we follow a group of replicants led by Rutger Hauer, Mr. Hobo with a Shotgun himself, who is trying to find a way to live past his 4-year expiry date.
Yeah.
And we also follow in parallel Harrison Ford as a Blade Runner who's trying to catch them.
It's not that far off, huh, when you think about it?
2019 to date, or the fact that we've colonized other planets?
No, just overpopulated.
I have a beef with that because if you look at the European and North American countries, the population growth is mostly due to immigration. We have kept our population growth by replication, human replication in check, and when other countries start doing that as well, the overpopulation thing is going to go away. It's just a different way of thinking about it, but Europe and North America, they're pretty fine with the overpopulation thing.
Well, they're not remotely overpopulated when you compare to what's going on in Asia.
Exactly, but in Asia they're still having like 5, 6, 7 kids, where here we're not. So when their mind shift changes and they maybe start having smaller families and stuff like that, there's not going to be as big of a problem.
I don't disagree with that. I think by introducing contraception in general, the population just sort of lowers. Like all the industrialized countries where contraception is more popular, their population tends to drop.
So, I mean, the whole overpopulation thing, I think, is, not that big of a deal. Mm-hmm. There are bigger problems to worry about. So, back to Blade Runner.
Well, I think it's a valid concern, though, because it's still, even if we don't overpopulate, we're going to reach a capacity population, and there's still going to be a scarcity war over water or something, you know what I mean? So, whether you look at that type of thing through the metrics of, like population or just...
believe it when I see it, in the sense of it being final, but it's sort of like, it's 2007. You're almost like 25 years later and you're still recutting your damn movie.
Is that the one that was released in like the collector's edition briefcase or something like
that?
Yeah,
That's the
one.
one.
I remember that one. Yeah.
Collector's edition briefcase.
Oh yeah. Well, this is back when DVDs were selling, right? So
okay. I guess, yeah.
So you bought them more for the case, and like it looks nice on a shelf,
Okay.
And it was like, I think it was a metal briefcase or something.
It was. Yeah.
It was really pretty cool. I have to say, I had like a little bit of collector geek kicking in when I saw it.
Okay, so what we're going to do for the episode is we're going to do a little quick synopsis of the movie for those of you who just want to remember what it's about. We're going to discuss the movie, then we're going to have a little spoiler section where we're going to feel free to discuss the plot points that, if you haven't seen the movie, you might want to skip. We'll keep that to the end, that way you can stop listening to the recording when we give you the warning. So, quick synopsis going in. 2019 is actually the date. That's 7 years from now. We have
flying cars and I hated the story. I was like, I didn't get it. Well, I was fairly young when I saw it, and then when I was a teenager, like I wanted to like it so much, just couldn't. If you had a vision for your first movie, and then you keep revisiting again and again and again and again and again, and you keep messing around with it, eventually you kind of lose it. It's kind of like adding constant spices to the meal that you're trying to do. Eventually, there's no flavor. So, I don't know. I get tired of those re-releases, director's cut, and it's like, okay, enough.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think one theatrical cut and one director's cut makes sense, because the director's cut is created, the studio comes in, goes like, well, we can't really make box office money with this, it's too long, whatever, and then you do your theatrical cut, then you release a director's cut to get some of a more authorial version of it. But, like, once that's made, like, you really should let it go. Like, the version I saw was the 2007 Final Cut version, and I'll